Right, couple of just quick housekeeping things. The guys who have attended before know that we record these, and normally they're shared on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So if you're not keen on us sharing your involvement, just send me a private message and I'll make sure that Russ edits you out of the proceedings, whatever that looks like. But certainly, hopefully you can use your involvement in these as a marketing tool for your own business, and it works for everybody else concerned. So let me know if you wouldn't like, if you're not keen on us sharing your involvement. And then as a GDPR requirement, and I know Nigel's asked me prior to the meeting, what we typically do at the end, as long as everybody's happy and everybody can connect if they think there's some potential collaborations, is to share everybody's email address with each other so that you can then connect with people you think you might want to benefit. So is everybody cool with that?
Yeah.
Fine.
All good, all good. Janet, hello, you sneaked in there.
I know, I'm sorry I'm late, sorry.
That's all right, no worries, no worries. Just so, and because we've got a few newbies as well, let's just do a quick round robin to tell everybody. Oh, there's another new entrant, Claudia. How are you? You're right, she's connected. Hi Claudia, how are you?
Hello. Hi everyone. Sorry to be late.
That's all right, no worries. So everybody knows who everybody else is, and assuming we don't get anybody new, they might just pop in at any moment now. Let's just do a quick round robin to tell everybody who you are, what you do, and what it's like going back to some sort of normality. Because I know for me, the kids went back to school yesterday and college, and it feels like there's a sense of normality returning to my life. So let's start with you, Mike.
Oh, hello, I'm Mike Haynesworth. I own the franchise for Everett, Masson and Furby, EM&F. I sell businesses and value businesses and help business owners to understand how they can increase the value of their business so that when they exit, they don't, as a last minute, panic and ring me and say, I want to sell my business next month, because it's something they will have been planning for the last 5 or 10 years. And so they will maximize their potential of their business. My son has gone back to work this week. He's been not furloughed, but he's been working from home, and he's a hopeless worker. I've got quite a large house, but he still manages to find the other end of the house with monotonous frequency and interrupt me constantly. And he's gone back to work, and my wife has now gone out to a meeting. So I think for the first time in a long time, I'm on my own in the house, apart from the dog, who will bark as soon as a delivery is due fairly shortly. So you will hear her.
And is that a good feeling, or you're feeling quite lonely?
No, it's a good feeling. It's a different feeling, yeah. My wife's promised to bring back some cake. She's gone for a coffee in a meeting, so she's bringing me back cake. So I'm looking forward to that.
Look, if you get cake every time somebody leaves the house, that's a win-win, Mike.
It's a win-win, absolutely. I'm going to run it out, don't I? So.
Good stuff. Sharon, tell us a bit about you.
Hi guys, afternoon everybody. I'm Sharon from Argos Accounting. So I've set up Argos coming out of 3 different practices, 20 years in accountancy, and decided I actually don't like the way they work. I'd like to work closer with my clients, more proactively with my clients. So here I am, that's me.
Cool. And has life changed for you? Kids doing their own thing, or what's happening in your world?
No, my kids are both still at home. They're both working with me at the moment, which is quite nice. It's a bit of a family affair, so it's good. Good.
What's it like working with family?
Do you know what? I was a bit sceptical to begin with, but it's been really nice. I'm a bit strange. I quite like my family.
Yeah, I'm the same. Apart from that brother of mine, he's a bit weird. Sorry, Russ.
Ooh, that's not nice.
Quick.
Yeah, Sarah, tell us a bit about you.
Thank you. Right, Sarah Steele. I own Better With Money.
Now, Better with Money provides financial education in the workplace with the aim to reduce financial stress for employees, which hopefully then reduces absence and increases productivity. Now, this is relatively new for me. I took on Better with Money. I bought the business in its entirety on Friday, the 13th of March. I should have known just before lockdown. So it's been nearly 6 months next week. But loving it. Had to convert all the face-to-face education to webinars and just been doing lots of networking, which is why I'm here. Now, my normality, now you might think, where the hell is she? This is my brand new office in Brentwood. So there's literally nothing here. I've just got a new bookcase there, a bit of a plant there, but I'm in the process of moving in. So it's been great to get out of the house because we've got 4 kids. So the Wi-Fi is so much better here. I can actually, I'm not going to be fading in and out and glitching, so that's great. But yeah, we've got 2 kids back at school now. One's going back to uni. I work with her. She does my online marketing, like my social media. And then another child has just started a placement with Bupa, but she's having to do that from home. So there's already 2 people at work from home, so it's good to be out.
Good stuff. And when you say a bit of a plant, did you want to go for like a full plant? Why only a bit of a plant?
A bit of a plant.
You said a bit of a plant. I've got a bit of a plant over there, and sort of, why not just get the whole plant as opposed to just a bit?
I tell you what it is. I haven't got the pot yet. It's feeling naked. I need to find a bright pink pot. So if anyone knows where I can get a bright pink pot, let me know.
Good job. Steve Silver, help me understand a bit about what's going on.
Good afternoon. I thought the meeting was started at 1, so I rushed back from an actual networking meeting, face-to-face. So I rushed back because I thought it was 1 till 4. I'm sure it was the inner circle last time, 1 till 4.
It might have been, mate. It might have been. But this one was definitely 2.
Yeah, but my life has changed a little bit in so much as my wife's gone back to work, and now there's the temptation of McDonald's just down the road. So I'm a bit concerned that I might, take up the opportunity from time to time because she's not around.
Yeah.
But no, I'm Stephen Silver from Silver Insolvency Solutions. It's a fairly newly formed business, and I deal with the task of finding solutions to business owners and individuals suffering with financial troubles.
Right, thanks. Appreciate that. Nigel, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I was previously a partner at McIntyre Hudson, but now I've set up by myself and my own consultancy business, looking after own and managed businesses, high net worth individuals, advising on personal tax, business tax, and accounting issues.
Amazing stuff. And has life changed for you as we come in September or not?
Not a lot, really, because a lot of my business is done online anyway. So it hasn't really changed very much.
Okay, fair enough. Is anybody else going out and about seeing people? Because we've had clients in this week, which has been quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, Laura was...
As I say, even in the normal conditions, most of my work is actually done online. Or video calls or telephone calls, so it hasn't really changed a lot.
Fair enough. David, what's going on in your world? Oh, can you unmute yourself, mate?
Done it. That's it. Morning, Chris. Yeah, you've gone out of order, so I wasn't expecting to unmute. Sorry about that. I was expecting the trail. It didn't work. Basically, I run a company which is involved in business support and compliance work generally. Business support, majoring on helping the SME business community to get a foothold into public procurement, public contracts generally, helping them sort out their systems, procedures, practices, policies, and get themselves into a state where they might be fit to supply the public sector, because the public sector, as you all know, have slightly different criteria for the appointing of suppliers of goods and services. So that's where we really come from, although the major part of the business in recent years has been on compliance work, helping companies to get and secure and maintain the ISO suite of certifications and other British standards to give them added impetus to be attractive to the public sector.
Yep.
So particularly ISO 9001, which people know about, so I'm not going to go into the boring details of that, but making sure they can secure it and maintain it effectively, as if you like, some sort of accolade that they can deliver a quality service, but also they have an underpinning quality management system, because to me ISO 9001 has a very strong slant towards making sure your management systems are up to speed. So that's really where we've been coming from. As far as getting back to normal goes, don't want to get back to normal. I'm quite happy now driving up and down the A13, the A127, and sort of cramming myself onto the C2C or the underground into Canary Wharf, where I'm going. I'm quite enjoying working from home. I've adapted to it quite nicely, thank you.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? We've got a white paper coming out in a couple of weeks, and we did a piece of research for that white paper, asking people how lockdowns changed their perception, and some of the comments that we got. So we always had, like, on each question we had another box where people could put comments, and a lot of them were around, I'm not missing the commute. Do you know what I mean? One of the things that I'm glad I'm not doing anymore is just so much travel. So I don't think you're alone.
It spins off, and I can get an extra half an hour in bed as well. You know, I haven't got to waste an hour travelling to London and an hour back in the evening. So the dog's happier, gets a longer run. I'm happier because I can watch breakfast TV, as if, I'm enjoying the new landscape. Thank you very much. I don't want to go back to the new normal. I don't want any normal. I want to be different. Let's have some different challenges and things to face up to, because perhaps we've got ourselves into a little rut and always assumed that we've got to turn up to a meeting and we've got to have a face-to-face. And we've probably got into the situation where we thought that's the way of doing things. I don't think it necessarily is.
We can manage it differently now, can't we? As Nigel said, you know, it's just the expectations for clients are now a bit different. It's just that I miss seeing people. That's why I'm inviting people in. So that's part of the reason.
No, I agree with you. You can't ever get away from the benefits of a face-to-face eyeball contact meeting. But I think once you've established that, you can reduce the frequency down. You know, I go and see a client every couple of weeks. I don't need to do that anymore. I can do it elsewhere. It's environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
I save on coffee.
It's that frequency. Once the relationship is built, do you need to do it as often? And I'd agree, you probably don't, do you?
Just run it back and just repaint the whole thing and start again. I think it sounds a bit dark, but I also think it's a great thing, all this lockdown. It's made me rethink the whole business strategy, the whole business way forward, the way I do
100%.
business, where my priorities ought to be lying. It's given me space to think about things, which...
Time to reflect about the business has been a big one. Friday, talk to me.
Just you? I'm going to talk to everybody here.
Tell everybody about you.
Talking just to you. Hi, everybody. I'm Pradeep Mistry. For those who don't know me, you sound familiar, but I reinstate myself. But for the newbies, I run a practice called Life's Mystery. You won't forget that in a hurry. My practice works with grey head, silver head, no head people. I get involved with later life planning for some of the things that Mike has talked about, Nigel has talked about, and some of the things that David has talked about just a moment ago is later life planning. Chris does all the financial side of it, make sure that you're comfortable financially. I look after the quality side of it. You know, how do you spend your time in your later life? Maybe carry on with some of the work that you're doing, but not at the same. Is that me or somebody else? Worrying.
I think that was you.
Too much energy here, I guess.
You're generating your own static, Friday. I don't know what's happening.
But yeah, my favorite clients are from the age range of 55 plus. A lot of the cases that Chris has brought to this table has been really my favorite, something I can really bite into. To be honest with you, today I'm struggling. You haven't given me much to work on, but loads of questions to ask anyway.
Good.
In terms of norms, I think we got back to what we call a normal now. You know, I don't think we can go back to what we were doing before, but there is inkling of it. I've got some clients who rather do face-to-face. I've done 2 already. Most of them are happy online. But that means that, workshops have to be done online as well, just like on Zoom or other Microsoft Teams. But it's not been much of a problem or presented any challenges. Something that David mentioned is that, it's what is given is time to sit back and reflect on the journey that we've been on, what used to be the norm, which isn't there anymore. So it's partly we're missing that. It's a bit like a grieving process. You let go of that and you want to go back to familiarity. But this is your familiarity now. So the next phase here is looking ahead and saying, well, what can you create from here? So it's given this opportunity to think and plan ahead, including in business. What do you want to do with your business? What do you want to do in the next 5 to 10 years? These are the opportune time to think about all these things, rather than being on the fast lane of, rat race.
Thanks, Pradeep, appreciate that. And Laura's next. And Laura, actually, we've had an actual, like one of those old-fashioned face-to-face do you remember them? We've had one of those meetings. So I think, Laura, you were the first person I saw when we were getting back to normal. So would you like to tell everybody a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, Chris and I met for the first time and only time. I jumped at the chance of kind of getting in my car and going somewhere and meeting someone because, I think what this has given us is flexibility and options and all of that. But, I like people, I like being out, I like a change of scenery. And I was just wondering earlier, actually, there seems to be a kind of, are we going to go back to face-to-face meetings or aren't we? And I think there's a mix when it's one-to-one. But in a group scenario, I wonder if we're going to embrace more of the video conferencing. So you've got some of the people in the room and then some of the people not, because it seems to be there's some decisions. I was on a trustee meeting the other night and there was this decision whether we were all going to go back to, around somebody's house and have it, or whether we were going to have it, continued on Zoom. And next time I will say, well, why don't we do a mixture, because people have options. And some people were saying, oh, I quite like it being on Zoom, and others were like me saying, I want to come around your house and have some cake and actually see you. So certainly I've been thinking about this for the Inner Circle events, and maybe not next month, but the month after. What we're going to do is we've got a meeting room, the office you came to, I've got a meeting room next door where Inner Circle normally happens. I think, Janet, you've been to one in the office, Charlie has, Steve has, there's a few people at Pradeep has. And what we'll do is we'll have Zoom up on the screen plus people in the room. Yeah. And I think that can work just as well. Yeah, absolutely. So I started my consultancy business last October. So I've worked as a finance director for years, accountancy professional back in the day, worked in practice. So now I'm providing a service for businesses looking at what support they need financially, giving visibility of numbers, looking at forecasts, looking at their whole strategy, and making sure that they know where they're going. So obviously we all kind of link in quite well with each other, don't we? We've got different aspects, as I'm sure this study will bring out, hopefully. And my school last Thursday and is absolutely loving it. And it's funny because it's almost like he's gone back to when he first started school, because he's so tired, and it's bizarre. Like, he's sleeping in, he fell asleep on the sofa watching football last night. That was just unheard of. But it's good to see.
Good to get back into the habits. Charlie, do you want to share with everybody a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. So I started work with Chris a year and a half ago, and we're doing some work with Cervello to offer our clients, mainly SMEs, employee benefits and wellbeing services. So we're really helping them design their strategies as much as also doing the broking and getting everything set up for them, and keeping things going on an ongoing basis. So we do a lot of work on the communication and making sure the employees really understand what they've got and the benefits, and really making sure that the benefits remain kind of in line with what the business's strategy is. So that's been really interesting, and I've really enjoyed it. And it's certainly business is picking up a bit post lockdown, which is nice as well. So it's all looking good.
Good, amazing stuff. Janet, tell everybody a bit about you.
So it's small business accountant. So been in practice on my own for about 5 years. Before that, was in practice before, worked with a few corporates. So it's been a really interesting time for us at the moment with all the furlough in business. It's been very stressful and very demanding. So just supporting all our companies that we've sort of built up over the last few years. So it's been interesting times. We've got some real winners and losers. Literally while I was sort of like, I just had someone drop in who's actually really busy at the moment. He's supplying security services. So he's really busy. But then on the other hand, I've just been on the phone to a company that's not doing so well, doing cleaning services, but mainly domestic cleaning. So that's a struggle for them because that area of their business is not doing so well at the moment. So we've just got this real mixed bag, I think, going on, where we've got businesses that some are doing really, really well, and some are doing really not so well. Either way, they're all needing quite a lot of support. So
either regardless of them doing fantastically or not, they still need your help, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so we don't seem to have, we seem to, the last 3 or 4 months have been fairly demanding for us. So, but yeah, all good. I suppose good problems to have.
Yeah.
But I'm back in the office. We're doing a bit of a rota, in that there's 2 of us in the office generally at any one time, with one of us working from home. So that's sort of working out now. But it's nice to get back into the office and what to say. I'm much more focused here.
100%.
At home,
yeah.
Not a good place for me.
But the only thing is, I've got a giant cow picture in my lounge, and every time I do a zoom from my dining room table, it looks like I've got horns. And this is just a bit more boring, I've got a camera and a photo of a child with our Cervello logo on. So yeah, that's the only difference for us. Claudia, tell us a bit about you.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia. My background is in healthcare. I was a healthcare manager in the independent sector. The last major job I did there was to help to build a brand new hospital from scratch, staff it and everything. And we got CQC inspected and got outstanding. And I thought, good, now I've accomplished that. Let me go do something that I would like to do. So I've taken on public speaking coaching. And it's more, I also do leadership coaching, but I consider it more mentoring than coaching. I am big into chatting, so I've also have a little side hustle of learning how to do some radio. So when you talk about Norm, I used to be able to attend a radio station that I'm training at, and since COVID, I haven't been able to. So now I'm back again at the studio practicing how to woo everyone through speaking words. Now, hopefully, with the discussion taking place today, I'll be able to demonstrate that. And apart from that, for the Norm, I volunteered as a radiographer in the NHS, in one of the NHS over the COVID period. So what was good about it? You go on the M25 and there is no one there. You drive straight up the motorway and back. I think that has now returned to norm, but I've completed my volunteering. So that's sort of bittersweet in a way, but I'm sort of glad to be getting back to business. And to be honest, our public speaking coaching business has not stopped over the COVID. A lot of people have looked into their lives and decided they want to fix up on their soft skills, and they've chosen the route of public speaking. So I've been getting clients either commercially, corporately, in politics and in radio. So I've been doing quite okay. Thank you so much.
Good, great. Thank you for everybody for coming along, and hopefully everybody got a copy of the case study fine. And I know that Hervé's been sending out reminders and stuff like that. Before we start, and I know I'm going to start with Janet, because I know that even regardless of whether we do this face to face or we do it online, I know she's taken loads of notes already, and it's always a good place to start. So a couple of things to point out. Apologies, I've read it through. I wrote this last week. I read it through again. There's a couple of elements where I've sort of gone off on a sort of trail to nothing. Make some assumptions if you need to, or ask the question if you need to. One other important thing is there's always an 80s reference in every single case study. First, there's no prize for getting it. It's just personal satisfaction. But if you do get it, just highlight. Mike's normally quite good at these. Just highlight it. And just so you know, I am watching Cobra Kai on Netflix, and I haven't used the Karate Kid on any of my case studies yet. So that will be coming up sometime soon on a future case study. However, let's take a look at the issues in question. Janet, do you want to start by sharing your thoughts? And in particular, let's focus on the extra questions you might want to ask to understand a little bit more about these particular clients.
Okay. I must admit, I've had a real quick read through of this time, so I'm a little bit sort of rough around the edges on this. But I think the things that I probably want to know to start with would be the three separate companies. So why they not thinking about in some, particularly because one was making the loss, one was making the profit. You know, we've got this real mix going on, and it would seem a bit disproportionate if one's going to be suffering losses and the other's going to be paying tax on their profits, as to why you wouldn't try and bring them together in some shape or form, whether it was shares in one company or a holding company or something along them lines. So I think that would be sort of main question around that. You know, would they consider another structure on that? I think the other things that were sort of coming back to me was the other company that Norm was involved in. What systems they've currently got in place. It was saying that they needed some key, they're not getting the key data, but I wondered what the systems were in place that was going to generate that data to start with, so then we could establish whether, you know, what we can put together on that. I mean, if there's no systems in place, then that would need to be addressed to start with, and then we can work on what management reports we can build for them to give the information they need. So I think they were the first things that were sort of jumping out at me, you know, to bring the look at why the company that was making the sort of 20k sort of fixed costs, to see what their fixed costs were, to see if there was any movement on that. If the restaurant company is making a 20k sort of loss a month, then it would be to look at that and see where that money's going. So I think they were my initial thoughts. Yeah, I think that's my initial thoughts.
If the, and again, there might be some other people who sort of want to sort of chip in on this. If the majority of those fixed costs were rent related, is there anything in the new provisions they can do to mitigate that?
I don't think there's no sort of legal provisions to say that, you know, rent has got to be reduced. There's certainly on some of the rates there is, but not necessarily on rent. I think there's some protection in that the landlords can't start actions, and they're being given a longer time to pay. But I do think that a lot of the landlords are open to negotiation at this time, and they would rather, you know, a company doesn't you know, go under without having some conversations to see whether or not there's some negotiation on that rent. So I would definitely open up those lines of communication. If
you know what, I think the commercial property market, particularly in London, is going to be interesting over the next couple of years. So having that dialogue,
100%,
might certainly be worth doing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Laura, should we continue with you? What were your thoughts in terms of the questions you might want to ask either Sam, Diane, or Norm or Cliff to understand a bit more about how you might be able to help?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's tons of questions to be asked. I mean, it depends what issue we're kind of looking at, but in terms of the key data that's required, it'd be useful to understand what drives the business commercial decisions and what do they feel that they're not getting. What are their main drivers for that? I'd also want to know how they've put together these forecasts to know that they're going to run out of money in the hospitality business in 4 months' time. What assumptions have they made around that? I'd want to know plans for the mum's future, for example. What is it that she wants to do? How does she feel? What are the costs of the nursing home? The other thing about sorry, I'm sort of flitting around a bit. The other thing about the planning for Norman's future, because he wants to plan for the next decade, doesn't he? He's talked a bit about selling the business, doing a management buyout. So what is it that he feels, what staff are involved in the business, and does he feel that that's something that they want to do, and what the implications of that? Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Start.
Good, yeah, good start. Charlie, thoughts?
Yeah, from me, I think, I've got leapt a bit further forward to Norm, where you've talked a bit more about the benefits. So he said that he set up a wellbeing program for his staff, and he's interested in sort of, I guess, keeping, in his words, he has got ambitious plans for the growth, and he's reliant on the need to recruit, reward, and retain high quality individuals. So he seems to be keen to me to keep himself market leading as an employer in terms of the benefits, but also he's got a genuine interest in his employees too. So I'd be interested in seeing what the wellbeing program is that he's implemented. I'd be interested in perhaps knowing whether there are any other benefits other than a pension in place. If there are not, there are fairly standard benefits that an employer would need to put in place to be on the average in that kind of professional place. So life assurance, maybe some sort of sickness protection, maybe some sort of health cover, but really understanding, I think, what's the sort of core strategy of the wellbeing program and how to fit those things in. Because in our mind and usually how we work, we'd want to get a wellbeing program in first in some ways, to make sure that we're doing what we can to sort of create a preventative culture where we're not, where people are already taking actions towards improving their mental, their physical and financial health. And then we'd probably look at adding benefits to support those things going forward to make sure when we get into crises, there are covers and protections in place. But I think it's important to start with the right sort of spirit, and in doing that, that's making sure that wellbeing program is well implemented and engaged and people are taking it on board.
Lovely, thanks, Charlie. Appreciate that. Who should we go with next? Sharon, what were your thoughts and what questions would you like to ask?
So quite a few of mine have been covered by Laura and Janet, surprisingly enough. So the one thing I'd ask is, would you consider it something like an EMI scheme? Because that could help with employee retention effectively, certainly for the key guys. Most of my other ones, I think have really been covered. And what's the connection? I know they're friends, but the businesses are quite different. And obviously, where does Norm come into this?
Yeah.
Is there anything else behind that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just get the feeling, maybe I read between the lines too much.
So go on, help me understand your thought process on that. What were you thinking?
So is he a brother-in-law? Is there a family connection? I know that we say they're friends, but I'm friends with my brother-in-law.
Ah, right, okay, yeah, no, gotcha. On this case study, assume they're just friends. But the weird thing when I'm writing these is I want to make sure that I'm including enough meat, enough content to make sure that we include everybody. And if I've got a business that's struggling to survive, I might want to also include a business that's not, so that at least other people have got some comments, if that makes sense. So there's no ulterior motive. They're just mates.
No, they're just mates. That's fine. I get it. This is only the second one I've done. So the first one didn't do this, and I thought, oh, maybe there's something.
Yeah, that's good. Make up your own story, Sharon. I love it. Do you know what I mean? Actually, I might get you to write the next one. It'll clearly be a bit better than this. Sarah, Sarah, what were your thoughts?
Right, yeah, there's a few things. I mean, the first thing on the guys, Sam and Diane, I guess I just would want to understand a little bit more about what kind of age they were, what their exit strategy was, where they're planning to take that business, before looking at how it might get restructured going forward. Like Charlie, because I'm more into employee benefits and well-being, I kind of focused on Norm and everything that Charlie said about really understanding what that well-being program was that was put in place. I had, but I would also want to know whether it says he's paternal, but whether he's actually had any feedback from the benefits that are in place at the moment, whether they've done any surveys. Do they know what, they've got a relatively young workforce there. Do they know what they actually want and what those people are trying to achieve in order to try and find things that are going to motivate them and retain them? Because I know that, particularly in that age group, well, any age group, it's hard to see more than 5 years ahead in terms of where you're going to be in life, and throwing life assurance at them when they're 20 is key, but it's not necessarily something that they're going to see as, oh yes, that's going to be the difference between me staying and going. So it's just trying to find out how they feel about that. I was really interested in Diane and the mum, more from a personal perspective, because my granddad's actually just about to turn 99. And we've recently been through all these, he's widowed, and we've been through these conversations with him, and we've done equity release and all those sorts of things. So, but again, we had a lot of conversations with him about what was important and whether he would want to go to a care home, stay at home, and all of that. So that was more from a personal perspective, more than a business. But yeah, definitely to find out.
Just for the benefit of the group, and just to satisfy my curiosity, when did those conversations start, and how long have they taken to get some sort of resolution?
Oh, well, so yeah, they actually only started about 1.5 years ago, because he is mentally sharp but physically slowing down, and he lives in a big house in Danbury. His bedroom's up 2 flights of stairs, and we're having to get chairlifts and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was at the point where we felt that it wasn't safe for him to be alone anymore. So there really were a couple of choices. One was that he went into a home, and we looked at that, and he was very adamant that wasn't what he wanted to do. I think because of his own perceptions, and because he is very mentally astute, and he didn't want to do that. But obviously we then had to think about, well, how can we raise enough money for him to have somebody with him permanently, and have a living carer, because although he's got a good pension, that's an expensive thing.
It starts to get expensive, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And he took a lot of persuading. I mean, as far as he's concerned, he'd live at home by himself with nobody there ever. But once he'd had 1 or 2 falls a month and had been injured, so even the day before the living carer arrived, he phoned me up to say, "Oh, I've changed my mind. I don't need her."
But what though? I get that. If you've been independent for the majority of your life since you're an adult, why would you that transition's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's an interesting one.
My grandma had died 15 years ago, so he was quite used to being by himself. So I just have to say, Grandad, give it a week. Just a week, that's all you have to do. And if you don't want it, fine, off she goes. And by then, I knew. He was like, oh my God, she's the best. And then they're best friends, and it's amazing. But,
You say that, Sarah, we had a similar conversation with my grandmother, which is why that struck a chord, and I sort of kept quiet about it. She was 89 odd, living with her sister who was 95, and they decided they wouldn't have a living carer. We arranged it. They were due to come in on the Monday, and on the Sunday she phoned the agency and told them not to come. And we then had the conversation of, what are your plans for now? And in the end, they decided that the best thing would be, they weren't going into a home, they didn't want to do that. They'd come and live with me. It's talking. So we up sticks, we relocate so they can move in with us. My grandmother actually passes away in between time, and her sister moves in with us. So now she's 95 odd. Most of her peers have passed away. Her siblings have all gone, and she's very, very lonely, living in a house with 4 generations. It's a tough one. So I feel for Diane on that, because what do you do? And they don't want power of attorney because they don't want necessarily to let go. So it's persuading them that this is actually in their best interests.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Can I intervene in this conversation?
Go on, Steve.
Only because both my parents are still alive. Both of them are screaming and shouting at each other. One's 88, one's 91. They both drive. My mum still goes to the shops and does the shopping, but my dad's mentally astute, as Sarah said, with her, you know, but physically he's you know. And every time me or my 2 brothers suggest anything, they tell us all to F off. We know what we're doing, and unfortunately, I've got to put up with it. But it is stressful, I can assure you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one, because we, from Cervello, looks after probably, I don't know, 15 families, where we look after mum and dad, son and daughter, and then we've started to look after the 3rd generation, who are typically in their 20s and 30s, and we do, with the support we provide for them, is effectively paid for by mum and dad and nan and granddad. But certainly we'd recommend a open and honest conversation starting as early as possible about stuff like legacy. And the reason I asked Sarah about how long that conversation took is because we all know that there's a stigma around money. We all know that those conversations, you're not going to go, should we have a chat about it? And the next day people are comfortable to do it. It's just not going to happen. So, but actually, you know, my dad's still around, my mum's not. But certainly part of the conversations we have is, let's just make sure that if anything did come and happen, we've got the knowledge to help you. And
yeah, but my conversation,
take time.
My conversation hasn't started, because he won't have a conversation. He won't have a conversation with us. He knows it all. He knows everything. He's done everything. He's put everything in trust. He's not, you know, he won't discuss anything.
Yeah. About Steve, just one quick point on that then. He's done everything, but do you know what he's done? So that
he gave me a postcard about being the oldest son. He gave me a postcard about 10 years ago, you know, with details of the safe code,
gotcha.
You know, where the pensions are and where this is and where the assets. He hasn't told me about the American assets yet, you know, and I know there are some American assets which he's keeping from me, but no, he gave me a postcard.
So he's planning it all right then.
Yeah, obviously that's you know, being updated from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know where to go to for information should the inevitable happen in due course.
Yeah.
Can I just, I realised, Chris, I didn't answer the question really about how long it took. The reason we started chatting to him in November and the carer started in the January, but I think the reason that it was so quick was because suddenly it was a safety issue. It wasn't just about, you know, what would he like to do? Because I think that would have gone forever. But the fact that he actually had the last fall that he did enabled me and my mum to kind of say, actually, we need to
sort this now.
We're just going to have to do it, regardless of whether he wants it or not. It's happening, and he's going to sort of have to come to terms with it, which is why we said just try it for a week.
I wish I was in your position. I tell you, he's had a couple of falls, and he refused. My mum wasn't even allowed to tell me about the falls. He went to hospital once, you know, and they keep it from me, and they keep it from my 2 other brothers.
So really, really interesting about that. Events making actions become more pertinent. So it's just interesting how sometimes actions need to nudge us forward. Mike, do you want to share your thoughts on going back to the case study? Do you want to share your thoughts on the case study for me?
On the 80s scene, by the way, I said to my wife, oh, he's made it really easy this week. And she said, well, what is it? I said, Sam Malone and Diane Chambers. Casablanca, she said. 1980s, I said. Everyone knows your name, you know, surely.
I know.
And she didn't know, and she should have done. So what can I say? But yes. So I picked a couple of points out. I've never really understood why people have disparate businesses that don't share customer bases, don't share products. And so Sam and Diane's group at the moment, I don't really see a great deal of logic in it.
Yeah.
Restaurants are great. They have a good gross profit margin, so you'll be typically making 60, 65, maybe even 70%, depending upon what type of restaurant it is. And so when you pass your break even, they're very profitable. But as soon as your sales tail off, of course, the gross margin disappears and they make big losses. If this restaurant's losing £7,000 in August with the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, I just don't understand it. Every restaurant around here has been heaving with queues down the street. So that suggests maybe they had to reduce the numbers to a level that I do wonder whether it's actually going to make it through, to be perfectly honest. So, you know, somebody needs to look at that very seriously. Could you sell it? I've had a couple of restaurants, cafes that numbers have gone down dramatically during lockdown. And does that affect the valuation? It kind of shouldn't really, because your valuation is based on where you're going forward. So the fact that everybody's been in lockdown and closed the restaurants kind of shouldn't affect the valuation. The reality is it does. The reality is there's a COVID discount. We don't really know what it is at the moment. That one may just simply be there to close down. I don't know. I don't understand the online business, so there's just too many questions to make any comments about that one. But even the food business is dependent upon two large UK retailers. That's, if they're thoroughly dependent on two large retailers, that's a huge risk for them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they should be focusing in their minds on one of their businesses, build it up, make it into something. Maybe they're being pulled in too many directions. If they've, nobody can blame them for the fact that restaurants turned into losses. No one else saw this one coming. So I don't think Sam and Diane can be blamed for that. But the fact you've got three different businesses. On the other hand, of course, you could say that one of them's still making money. So that's a plus of having three businesses. You're not wholly dependent upon one. But so that's about all I've got on those. Norm needs a team in place, doesn't he? Norm's business is going in the right direction. He's got all the time in the world, and I do appreciate that people perhaps don't want to look more than 5 or 10 years ahead at their age, but you know, we're asked that question. And the benefit of getting a team in place is it not only makes your business more valuable. So if Norm actually works himself out of the business over the next 10 years so that he can not get involved on a day-to-day basis or get involved at a higher level on a day-to-day basis, then that A, makes his business more valuable, and B, it means he doesn't need to sell it because he's only working 1 day, 2 days, 3 days a week. He can go away on holiday for 3 months. If you can go away on holiday for 3 months and your business is exactly the same as it is when you come back, then you've got a business that's highly sellable, but you don't necessarily need to sell. I've no comments on the power of attorney, apart from my mum, sadly, went into hospital last September. We didn't think she was making it through Christmas, but she did. And in January, she continued to improve slightly, but the hospital didn't want her anymore. So we brought her home overnight. She's in an annex at the end of the house. The social services threw their hands up in the air and said, no, we can't cope with this, send her back to hospital. And then the host hospital put her into a nursing home. Just about a week or so before lockdown. I've seen her once since then. She's 91. Don't know how long she's got, but it's no way to end your life, is it?
No, not at all. When have they said you can see her again, Mike?
I've seen her once in the garden, but they've got two more. They've got 118 residents in this home, and every time one either gets tested positive or even runs a temperature, they lock it all down. So they don't let them out of the rooms. So she's got a mobile phone. She rings me 5 times a day in various, well, never happy, but so imagine any other emotion other than happy. She rings me with them. I think the 17th is the next day when they can start meetings again. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Steve, on the case study, I think my particular interest in getting you involved in this conversation is around the restaurant chain, and whether there is light at the end of the tunnel, what options they've got if they do decide to call it a day, and what questions you might ask to define that situation.
Well, certainly when I saw the case study, I concentrated on the Saluti group, and I put my little jigsaw puzzle in, looking at the restaurant chain, the food manufacturing, and the online business. And it was interesting to listen to everyone's views on things. And my first thing is, I couldn't understand, like Mike said, I couldn't understand why they have 3 different businesses. Especially, I can't see why you can't merge the online business with the restaurant business anyway, particularly. But the 3 or 4 things that I needed, obviously we need, for the restaurant side, we need a cash flow forecast going forward. I need to see, how many people are still on furlough, the other costs involved and things like that, other than the fixed expenses. But, what I was suggesting was, first of all, that again, I don't think there's any tax implications in the food manufacturing business lending and subsidising the restaurant chain over a few months. Again, depends on cash flow and so forth. The important thing there, and I have to advise Diane and Sam, that if you lend money to the restaurant chain to keep it going for a few months, make sure, first of all, you need a company search to see if there are any other secured creditors involved, but get a debenture and secure that money against assets, right, if you're lending the money. And the other thing is, should the food manufacturing business go belly up, which Mike said about the 2 retailers, which is very, reliant upon, should that go bust, and the food manufacturing company had lent a considerable amount of money to the restaurant business, there's a possibility that the directors could be done for what they call misfeasance, because a liquidator would want to analyse, what was the benefit of this money going out of this company, should it go bust. So misfeasance is a very big thing. Again, directors' loan accounts, could the monies, I don't know what drawings they're making out of the food manufacturing business. Again, I'd like to see whether they could afford to lend money personally to the restaurant chain if they want it to keep going. But yeah, there's so many different questions that you need to be answered and looked at. But it all stems down, I don't know how many other staff are being furloughed, but it stems down to cash flow all the time. I'd like to see the cash flow, see the predictions.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, mate. Nigel, what were your thoughts on the case study?
Yeah, my thoughts were, I'm a bit worried that the ready meal production company and the online business might at the moment be able to provide support for the restaurants in terms of profitability, but we need to look at the cash flows, because the fact that they're profitable over the year doesn't necessarily mean that they would be able to support them in the short term.
Right.
And so one of my concerns is that you've got 2 good businesses. Are they going to be brought down by trying to support a business that isn't going anywhere anyway?
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Yeah.
So that's a real concern. The other thing I'd want to look at is, how are they taking the monies out of the different businesses, and how are they doing dividends, salaries? Are they doing management charges between the businesses to make the best use of the tax situation? The other thing is, as far as if ready meal production was to lend the money to the restaurants and the bars and they went bust, the ready meal productions wouldn't get tax relief for those funds which have been lent because they're loans to connected parties.
Yeah.
So that's another major consideration. So if they wanted to get finance, they'd probably be better going to a bank or somewhere else and having the security through the ready meal production company, but not directly lending the funds to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are my main thoughts on the Sam and Diana. And then going to Diana's mother, gosh, there's so many questions here, lack of information. You obviously need to know the values of the property to discuss, consider inheritance tax. You need to know the value of the late husband's estate, to see what allowances could be passed on to the wife after his death.
Yeah.
You need to know what other family members there are, apart from Doreen. Apart from Doreen. Sorry, Diana. To see what the implications are. Is there a will, etc.
Okay. Really good points there. Thanks, Nigel. I really appreciate that.
Just on the Norm Peterson, the only sort of things I'd really want to look at, one of the main things I'd want to look at there is looking at the valuation of the company and the assets and the future profits, so one can see what is the risk in terms of capital gains tax and how many years could it be mitigated by doing the deal over several years, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we've got entrepreneurs relief to consider, but then the reality is with that reducing, if the value's more, potentially you need to cost that in as well, don't you? And that's the reality of it.
Okay. Entrepreneurs relief, but if it's possible that if you did a plan, you could do it over a sort of a 10, 15 year period. And if the gains are done over that period.
Yeah, you can mitigate CGT.
You might have no tax to pay.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on that. Right, sorry, I'll keep on mispronouncing this. Claudia, tell me what you thought about the case study. And from a coaching perspective, how might you be able to help some of the business leaders ask some questions about themselves?
It's supposed to be Claudia, but in the Caribbean, you're just grateful to be able to recognize your name when it's called. So now off to Claudia. That's fine. Now, I've been looking at Diana, and I look at the situation with her mom, and I wanted to understand the relationship between Diana and Sam and how they come about to make the decisions they've made about their businesses, how they come about having 3 separate companies. Now, most of it has been explored. So I'll go over to Diana with her mom. For that particular situation, there's a lot to explore there, but she's also considering, she seemed to be getting by okay, given the limited information. But what I would have her consider is why now, given the situation your business is in, or your businesses are in, and you having to look after your mother, you're going to consider helping out a friend's father to go in a care home. It's a consideration that is there. And it leads me to ask, what kind of a personality does she have? Is she someone who is very giving, or feels that doing good, makes her feel better? I know she's successful at business, but where does she draw the limit? Where does she draw the line? So that places a bit of consideration right there. Why would you want to consider all of that with what's going on with your businesses and your mother? There's a lot of work there to do. Now, with regards to Sam, I thought about Brexit. I couldn't help it, right? And the 15th of October.
Oh, we're so back to normal. Oh, no, nobody's mentioned Brexit in months.
So, what I was thinking of, have they considered how this will affect their businesses one way or the other? So that's somewhere where it could be advantageous. And how are they at taking risks? How are they at being proactive? all of that would be considered. And with regards to Sam's friend, who is Norm, I looked at the fact that he has 80% of a business that's doing very well. He has a youthful team that seem to be energetic and they seem to be productive. So my questions are, what is the relationship between him and Cliff? And is it that he's what personality type does he have? Is he a driven person? And maybe Cliff has tapered off or lost some, is happy at where they are in the business, you know, so have lost some level of enthusiasm. How did he come up with a 20-year plan? What's the thought process for that? And if you think that Cliff is not giving you the information that you need as regularly, getting the information but not as regularly, what's the communication between them like? Is Cliff aware that that has happened? And being of a maternal nature towards the staff members, I'm just querying, is it a form of liking to be in control? Just something that came out. And yeah, there are a few more, but I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, actually. Is it maternal or is it controlling? Because there are two different motivations that might impact the way somebody might run a business.
Yeah, and it could be due to his ambition. So if I'm ambitious and I need to get to this goal in 20 years, I have to make sure. And by default, you're starting to want to keep an eye on everything.
Yeah. So for me, so Pradeep and David, will come to you in a minute. But for me, I'm interested for Sam, Diane and Norm about what financial independence looks like for them and understanding what their next 10 years looks like in terms of what do they see as their end game for all of the respective businesses. I'm 100% with Mike on this one. I'm not overly worried about sort of them selling the business at the end. That might be an option, but getting it to a point where it can be sold, I think is sensible, because then you've got a business that runs more autonomously without you. And then you could be in a position where you can make some really interesting decisions. I think the other factor that I'm considering is how much time, effort, and energy are they going to spend on this restaurant business when potentially they've got better uses of their time, effort, and energy focusing on the businesses that are profitable. And is it time then to say, I'm not convinced this is going to be worth the risk and emotional effort and energy I'm going to take I'm going to take to do it. So, but that all comes with clarity about what they want to achieve. So, how close are they to, and we haven't got any answers in the case study, how close are they to personal financial independence, and therefore what decisions can they make with their business, assuming that time is the commodity that's the most valuable one, because that's the one that's finite. So that's the one that's where I'm sort of looking at. In terms of Diane and her mum, certainly from a practical perspective, certainly recommend we put a will in place. Certainly power of attorneys are good, and then just open up a dialogue with mum, because it might take a couple of years to get to a point where you've got some clarity, but starting that conversation sooner rather than later is really important. And then the other thing that I'd look at for Norm's business in particular is, at the moment, even though he's going to be transitioning over to his team, it's particularly reliant on Norm. And if he wasn't around for whatever reason, death, serious illness, or inability to work, what would happen to the business, and what protection does Norm need and the business need to make sure that it can continue? And that's going to be a conversation for Norm's business that's going to be an ongoing one, because Norm's stepping away, he's recruiting his team to take over his business. What happens if he loses one of his key members of staff that he's brought on to continue to grow the business? And I think making sure that his team's protected in the event and the business are protected in the event of the worst occurring is going to be a really important conversation to have. there's loads more on that, but I'll go on to David. David, thoughts on how you potentially help Norm, Diane and Sam, or anybody else in the case study?
I'm picking up more of your points, Chris. I think I took a more holistic view of the business. Everybody's talked about the individuals. I think there's upwards of 40 people whose lives could be affected if this business doesn't have a good strategic plan going forward. At the end of the day, they've probably all got mortgages to pay. They've all got commitments, and we're in a really challenging time at the moment. We've all heard of Brexit, thanks to Claudia, but it still has an impact, whether you like it or whether you don't. Going forward, that could have an impact on your business. We still have COVID to worry about. We've had some of the successes coming through from the Eat Out to Help Out campaign, which saw an upsurge in take-up. Great, but that's now tailing off. We've got problems emerging from the furlough scheme cessation, which is on the horizon. There's lots and lots of challenges coming forward for this business. And I've taken the view that I would rather look at the sustainability of the business itself. Could be a potential income generator for the people looking for retirement. So I've looked more at what have they done in the background to look at the risks of the business, which are on the horizon now. They're not in 5 years' time. There's risks to the business. What's going to happen to the retail and high street landscape going forward?
Yeah.
The government sort of abandoned the retail sector for a number of years. Is that now going to reverse and we're going to get more emphasis onto the retail sector and the high street? Would that then stimulate and encourage the restaurant side of the business to develop more on the high street? I don't think they've done a particularly good risk assessment. I know I'm coming from a totally different perspective, but I would like to see them done a far more comprehensive SWOT analysis about the way forward for the business. I think there's nothing on risk assessment. No criticism of the case study because I don't see it coming from that particular angle. But I've tried to spin it around a little bit because everybody's talking about the financial side of things. I'm trying to take a more holistic view.
David, that's entirely the benefit of these case studies because they bringing a fresh perspective on it is important, I think.
Yeah, sorry if I've taken it off spin.
No, cool.
There was several things in there. I think that they are in a risk game for many features of the businesses they're trying to run. It's been pointed out. Perhaps they are far too spread out. They're disparate at the moment. Perhaps they want to bring the businesses more into a more coordinated format. But I think they need to revisit their business plan, make sure they've got the right, and the point you made earlier, there's no real emphasis given to their business continuity plan. How are they going to keep the business going, given the threats that are facing them? We've got key players in this. We've got people that are there that need their livelihoods protected. You've got COVID, you've got Brexit, you've got end of the furlough, you've got so many uncertainties in this whole business arrangement. And I don't think they've done their homework sufficiently well enough to cover the continuity and sustainability of the business. Yeah. They've been a bit introverted to look at their own problems. Oh, I've got a mother, oh no. You've got to look at a holistic thing and say the sustainability of the company is important. Should we abandon some of the companies in favour of others? Should we put more concentrated effort into some of the sectors which we believe will be more likely to be supported coming out of the situation we're currently in? There's so many challenges coming forward to us. I don't think we've really got to the stage at the moment through this life cycle. We've had, 6 months of lockdown-ish. Whole thing can change tomorrow. We've got spikes on the horizon again, right? We've got local lockdowns, but according to the news, our spikes in incidences of reported COVID have happened 2 days in succession. What's going to happen today? Is that going to sustain? Is it going to change? Could we all be in lockdown by tomorrow? Could our whole business be really up against? Sorry, Chris, carry on.
But the nature of business, I mean, certainly the changes over the last couple of years have been unprecedented, but change is inevitable in any business, isn't it?
That's the point I'm making. There's changes and they don't seem to be challenging the changes.
Yeah.
And not really sort of having a look at and reviewing what the challenges might be and coming up with at least the contingency plans if we don't come out of this the same as we were before we went into it.
Yeah, SWOT
So
analysis makes sense. No,
Yeah.
I like the point about the SWOT, because I think that's something that more businesses should do more often. Friday, I know you said this one was a bit light for you this month. I do try and make sure that everybody's accommodated. But what were your thoughts?
Well, actually, you made up more. The sessions actually made up more than your lack of material for me, because instead of one case, I've got about half a dozen of them here. David, thank you for sharing. Stephen, Sharon, Sarah, you give them an insight into what a life could be like ahead for the older generation. So what we're talking in essence here, even with the case study, is a sandwich generation. Sam and Diane, we don't know if they've got any children or anything like that, but we know that at least they've got one set of parents. So they're in the middle. They have to think about the new generation, their own generation, and also moving forward. In terms of age-wise, I had to dig deep for the clues. The only age we've been given on here is Diane's mum, which sort of work it backward a couple of years, maybe 20 years or so, gives you an indication where Sam is, where Diane is, where Norm is, and where Cliff is. So it's particularly a generation that's my favorite, really, because it gives you a thinking about how to plan for the next generation, plan for your future in the generation, and also how do you look after your parents' generation. So a whole lot of things here. David mentioned about holistic view. I have a life holistic perspective on this thing. You know, they got responsibility for their business at the moment. And when they exit out of the business, what do they want to do with their spare time? It also means your family commitments and also your social side. And above all that is also your health, because we've just got some picture of a landscape of what health is like, going to be like in the future. So this is some of the things that I would ask them about. Have you prepared for it? Or even have you thought about it? So it's crucial where, you know, I think we're a bit counterproductive, but you can't plan 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead. But I think it is very critical to be prepared for it at least. David mentioned about change, you know, how to face change, is how to embrace change, because change is something inevitable in our lives. It's guaranteed. It's how you embrace those. So a lot of questions I would ask Sam and Norm about what are they thinking? I mean, Norm is already thinking about maybe 20 years ahead, which is well beyond our 5 or 10 years planning. He's also thinking about leaving a legacy, and he's already thinking about the employees. He's got management buyout, or at least putting it in a trust. So these kind of things, you know, if you've got something good that you want to leave a legacy for, now's the time to plan. So when you go work out your strategy, what are you going to leave behind? And it's really a life strategy moving forward as well. Thinking it through some key areas of your life. What is important to you now? What is going to be important to you moving forward, maybe 5 to 10 years time? So rather than Sam, Norm, and Cliff and Diane's case, how about we address all the other cases here around the table? Because you've already got some real life cases here personally, and I think that's a fair reflection on how I would handle Sam, Norm, Cliff, and Diane's case. And loads of questions to ask. A lot of it is really down to their choices. The choices you make now is going to have a major impact moving forward.
It's really interesting. I think this is probably an area that I'd like to explore a bit more, because I think you make a fair point. I think Sarah's point, and Sarah, if I'm wrong, just tell me. In my experience, and probably with Sarah and Charlie's, particularly when you're working with employees of corporates you're working with, that longer term vision is difficult for a lot of people to grasp. You know, as humans, we're not like engineered to have that 10-year view sometimes. And the favourite thing that I love, there's a guy Charlie and I know really well, a guy called Rohan Sivajati. He's got a financial planning firm up in, where's Rohan based, Charlie? Can you remember?
I think it's like Doncaster way, isn't it? It's up like, or maybe Leeds. It's somewhere a bit north.
So his niche is, I mean, typically my clients are similar to yours, Pradeep, approaching a period of time where they've got the decisions they need to make are on them now, as opposed to in 10 years' time. Rohan's business is called postcard planning, and the reason being is because when he engages, apologies if I mentioned this before, when Rohan engages with a new client, what he does is he sends them a postcard. He asks them to send a photo in of them today, and he uses an aging app to send them a postcard back. And this postcard is them now and them in 20 years aged using this app. And he says that it's a really pertinent way to start a conversation about actually that person on that postcard is you. So how do we make sure that person's looked after as well as the one today? Now, we're all involved in the conversation about looking at strategy over the medium to longer term. What interests me, and I think I'll start with Sharon on this, is how do we have conversations with clients that are not only immediate, but also take into account that 5, 10, if it's a young business owner for you, 20-year journey?
So I spoke to a guy yesterday, a young guy, and the reason he wanted to talk to me, in his words, is because I didn't just go in and say, here's a proposal, here's a solution. I went in to learn about him. Discovered he had 2 kids, because obviously they were running around. Discovered he's now had 2 buy-to-let properties that he sold to buy this house in Wales. So the exploration and the learning, and as we go through this, he's got 2 limited companies. They're very, very different companies. And I said to him, okay, so practicalities, what about pension? What pension are you taking? Oh, no, I haven't got a pension. And it's all these things. And it looks like I'm going to sign him up as a client, basically, because I didn't just concentrate on this is the services I can give you. And I went in to learn about him.
Yeah.
And then you find out what your clients need, and not only what they need, what they want and what they think they want, which is different to what they need sometimes. It's a whole exploration, and for me that's just so interesting. And then you can look and plan forward, and when you say to them 5 years and they think, oh, 5 years seems a long way away, you think, okay, in 5 years your kids are going to be at secondary school. Oh, that's only going to happen in a few years time. Well, that's the 5 years. It's not such a long way away, is it?
Yeah, it's linking it to those life points, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, this is going to happen at life points.
And
Sarah,
it's also about
okay, if I can just add on to this.
Go on, Friday.
I think what's important here is opening up the conversation, because a lot of people, we all have something in our aspirations of what we want to do when we give up work. But there's also other responsibilities to go along with it. And until you open up a dialogue and a conversation, none of these comes to a surface. And when I engage with my clients, we basically peel off the outer layer of now and get into the core of what is important to them, what is of value to them. And then when you address from that point, you find that, yes, actually, I want all these kind of things in places, and I better start thinking about it now. You know, you brought the subject of having wills and LPAs in place. All these are probably just pushed aside and saying, well, actually, I'm too young for all these things. You know, I'll leave it until later, until it gets to a stages of our father and grandfathers, and they still haven't got theirs in place. And you think, you know, you could leave it that late. So it's crucial that you start at least unwrapping some of these things, reviewing where you are. And I also recommend that, you know, what we used to call a midlife crisis is actually a midlife opportunity. Time to review your life's journey, where your careers come from, where your obligations have been met with families, friends, and children. And then you say, well, okay, that was one phase of my life. How would I want my next phase of life to pan out? And that comes from conscious design. Otherwise, what happens is when you come to a stage where you're not working, people think, oh, well, actually, you know, Chris, you've got time on your hand. Can you do X, Y, and Z for me? And Chris would love to do that. But at the end of the day, Chris would have not done something for himself.
Yeah, I think the challenge we've got with that is, and again, it's an experience we go through with some of our clients, that conscious design element feels too finite for a lot of people. And you need to explain that actually you'll have a plan and it will change over years. And that doesn't matter as long as you've got a framework of a plan that we can amend as your plans change. And thank you, Pradeep, because I'll let Cassie know when I go through my midlife opportunity. That's the phrase I'm remembering. Sarah, what were your thoughts on that? Helping people understand about the
life
longer
cycle,
term.
yeah. I was just going to say a little tip that someone told me, and they did it on me actually, and they said, right, tell me what's happened in your last 5 years, you know. And if I'm sitting here today, I'd go, well, I used to be employed and I used to work in London, and now I've got my own business, and actually, you know, I've got 2 kids that are now at university that used to just be at senior school, and actually my granddad and I did the equity release, and I did all this, you know. And you can go on and on and on about what's happened to you in the last 5 years, and then someone says to you, what's going to happen to you in the next 5 years? Oh, probably not a lot. I'll probably just be running my business. And by asking them about the last 5 years, you can make the point, well, look at all that stuff you've just told me. So although it's very difficult to pick yourself up and see where you might be, hopefully that gives you an idea of why we need to plan. And so
Yeah,
it was just a little
good
tip, and I loved that because it's so true, and it's just getting into that mindset. I mean, you know, there's lots of people here with different occupations, but I used to do pensions, and the age of 40 was just like a switch came on. Suddenly people were like, oh my God, I'm 40. Well, I haven't got a pension. Why have I not got a pension? What do I do now? And there are definite times in life where I think you can get people, they become more engaged, but it's nudging them forward, isn't it?
When they're going through a midlife opportunity, sounds like the perfect time to do.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, actually, it's you know, some interesting points that have been banded around. I think people are annoying, aren't they? You know, you can try and educate people, and you know, but if they're not ready to do it, they're not ready to talk about it, they're not ready to plan, there's nothing you can do. You know, even personally, and I think that 40 thing is definitely true. And also what struck me is recently my dad's been not so well, so you kind of think, okay, what happens, you know, because he's always been my backup, you know, he's been there all the time, and you know, just seeing and kind of thinking, he's not going to be around forever to sort of bail me out, and kind of, you know, actually I'm a grown up now. So even personally, and you know, I'm a financial person and I should know better, but it's mindset, isn't it? And it's all we can do is educate, plant the seed. I think your point, Sarah, was really great about what have you done over the last 5 years. But yeah, you can't force people. They're annoying.
It's really interesting. I'm helping. Charlie knows, and I think I've spoken to Sarah about this. One of the things that I do is I'm a member of the Institute of Financial Wellbeing, where we have a lot of these conversations about money and psychology and emotion and things like that. And I'm helping to host their conference in a couple of weeks. I'm one of the interviewers of somebody who's a guest speaker, and I'm going to be. There's a lady who runs a podcast called Squander. Is it Squanderlust, Charlie? I've been starting to listen to it over the last couple of days.
I've never heard of it, Chris. So I can't help you out.
So I'll put
who's running it?
It's Chris Budd's thing, but I can't remember the lady's name. It will come to me. But
I didn't know it starts with you.
Yeah. So I'm the interviewer of her. But her podcast is all about emotion and money. And I've started listening to a couple of episodes. And the interesting thing is, Martha Lawton.
But he looked it up.
Yeah, Martha Lawton. So I'm interviewing, as I say, I'm interviewing Martha in a couple of weeks. So I've started listening to the podcast. So at least I know a little bit about what she's doing. And the first couple of points she raised was the fact that regardless of, you know, we all work with people with financial decisions to make and support them through. And we all make mistakes with money. We all make mistakes in business. And actually the reality of people are annoying, but they're also, it's because we're human, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And like sort of we're sometimes too close to those personal decisions to make the right ones. But yeah,
And maybe sometimes that's what the learning is about. So what I do find with individuals, even myself, sometimes if you don't have the experience, you cannot grasp what it is that you need to, your next move, what is it you're supposed to be learning and taking forward. So asking the right questions to stimulate the mind, stimulate the thought process, leave it there. As Laura said, sow the seed, leave it there. It will happen one day. It's just like with kids. You talk to them, they will do what they want to do, and eventually they'll get there, hopefully. Yes? So it's pretty much the same thing.
Janet, just out of interest, with your clients, how do you sort of navigate that conversation between short-term, business is doing well, how do we make sure that we've got your medium and long-term plans in mind when we're thinking about the decisions we need to make?
Yeah, I think it is a difficult one to get people very sort of firefighting. I think particularly in the obviously current climate, so it's very difficult to get. And I think forecasting at the moment isn't, you know, absolute nightmare because we just don't know where things are going, where markets are going, where, you know, where the money's going to be spent. So I think it's a difficult conversations. We tend to build on them, you know, at then review time. So we look back to see what's been done. We look to where we are, and then we look forward, and then think about where our plans are for the future. So I think we tend to sort of wrap it up in the whole review process, and then it sort of fits in nicely as far as we've looked back, we know what we've achieved. Now, what do we want to achieve, and where do we want to go to? So I think it's working on that basis for us. That's what generates our conversations. But it is difficult to focus people at the moment, particularly at the moment. I think current climates, because you know, we're trying to put together forecasts for people, and like we just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, you could make particularly, you know, short-term forecasts, and I think you know, even them longer-term ones, you know, we don't really know where the high street's going to go now. Is that the end of it? Is it, you know, is it all going to be, you know, based online shopping? Is that just the real thing now? It's not. We're not going to go reverting back to our normal sort of habits.
Well, and I suppose that's one of the things about change, isn't it? You know, that you've got these like more immediate risks of COVID and potentially Brexit, but the longer term nature of the way we shop is changing. That probably is going to have a bigger impact anyway. Mike, how does that work? How does the current volatility impact how you value a business?
Sorry, turn the mic back on. I said earlier on that there obviously is a COVID discount for certain businesses. Some businesses are doing really well. I mean, typically you'd look at the last 3 years averages, but not necessarily because you're interested in what they did in the last 3 years, but as an indicator of where they're going to go for the next 3 years or next 5 years or next 10 years. The last 6 months you would hope isn't an indicator. But some businesses will have changed forever. A lot of retailers actually done very well, but local retail, so convenience stores, even news agents that have been on a huge downward slide have done a lot better. A lot of people seem to want food service businesses, interestingly. So if I put a cafe or a coffee shop on, I'll get lots of people inquiring about it. I think that's a lot of people. That's because people have decided to change and not work for someone else, and they want to work for themselves. And you know, that's a relatively low barrier to entry to get into food service. Other than that, I can't tell you what the discount will be. I can't tell you how it will change multipliers. We don't really know, do we?
Depends on the market at the minute.
Depends on the market. Depends on the buyer.
Yeah. Nigel, what are your thoughts about that? Short term, long term, and how you get the balance right?
Well, a lot of our clients, obviously they have different generations. So you'd look after the parents and you'd look after the sons and the daughters.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's comforting for the parents that you're around so that they can see that you're sort of looking after the sons and daughters, guiding them through the business. And then when the eventual day comes that the parents die, that they're comfortable that the sons and daughters will fall into a position which you've sort of planned for the last 10 years for them.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of a hand-holding exercise, really, for the
Are
company.
you talking about businesses that are intergenerational? You know, you've got the mum and dad, and then the
Yeah, because quite often, particularly with property businesses,
yeah.
you have the parents that own a company which owns, say, 15 properties or something.
Yeah.
Eventually, in 10 years' time, that's going to be passed on to the son or the daughter, so that they gradually have to become involved in the businesses so that they're in a position they can run it themselves.
But it's interesting because Steve mentioned this point about his mum and dad and the little card they gave him a few years ago. We always recommend to clients, even if we don't know the son and daughter, that our name and details is on that card, because that then gives a bit of a continuation in service. And then I mean, ideally, we'd like to have a conversation with the next generation, but that, as we've said, that doesn't always work in the conversation. But as long as our name's on that card, at least we can then make sure that, because a lot of the conversation we have is we want to make sure the kids are okay. Great. Part of the service that we want to give is making sure that at a time when they're going through huge emotional stress, we can take some of that worry away. And that's why we recommend that people put our names on that sort of contact card as well. But yeah, it's an interesting.
And one of the big conflicts that we have is some things may be good to do for tax planning purposes, but it's not good for the family.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, from a tax planning point of view, it makes sense in the example of Diana and her mother Doreen that possibly for Doreen to give the property to Diana now while she's in good health. But that obviously has risks with it, because who knows what Diana's future is going to be. Is she going to be stay with Sam? Are they going to split up in 5 years' time? And if they did split up, where does that leave Doreen if she's given all her assets away to her daughter?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the other element you've got as well is the sort of gift with reservation element. If Diane's mum stayed in the property, because that then would effectively mitigate unless Diane's mum was paying market rent, the fact
that comes back onto the value of the properties, and that if the property is valued at less than $1 million anyway, they'll not have an IHT problem.
Potentially, yeah, and it goes back to that. And I suppose the other thing, as you say, is if Diane's mum's gifting it to her, getting that additional IHT nil rate band allowance is going to be important in the overall calculation as well.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So just want to go round and there's a lot in this case study. I appreciate that, but one of the things that I just want to have a look at is what natural next steps might you recommend for Sam, Diane, Norm and Doreen, Diane's mum. So let's start with Sharon. What are your thoughts about the first couple of additional steps you might recommend that they take?
Streamlining their businesses, possibly losing one and keeping the most profitable, because trying to plug your attention through 3 businesses, you can't.
Yeah.
It's like looking after 3 babies, isn't it? How much time do you give each one of them? You have to cut your losses. I'm not saying cut your losses, but I'd be talking to Mike possibly about selling one of the businesses, maybe the restaurant, which is obviously the one that's struggling and that's going to take much of their time. So that's for them. For Diane's mum, I'd look at the ownership of the property, and I'd certainly look at, I don't know, it's a really tough one when they become old, because that they don't see that they need the help, and you've just got to keep, as you say, keep that conversation going, keep that conversation open, and make sure it is an open conversation. So you don't want to belittle them and you don't want to degrade them, but you need to make sure they have the support that they need. So that's a tough one.
Thank you.
Norm's got a flourishing business. He needs regular reporting. Somebody needs to sit down with him and really go through what he needs to know and what he wants to know, so that you can then structure that. And then how does he nurture his employees? And EMI is a good scheme to look at. They're young now, but they're not going to be young forever, as we all know. We all get old.
Do we?
Something to encourage. We do, unfortunately.
I know. This midlife opportunity is really killing me. My bones are aching.
Well, I'm trying to be Pat Tuttle there.
Dave, how about you, mate? What would you suggest? Oh.
Take off mute first. That's the first thing I did. I think, broadly where I come from, that I would much prefer to see a more expansive thought processes from all of them as to about what they're going to do with the businesses as opposed to the individuals. I think they need to worry an awful lot about the future. I think there's so many imponderables, uncertainties out there. But with all uncertainties, it brings you opportunities, as been said before by other people. You've got to look at threats and opportunities, haven't you? Yeah, there are some threats going to come forward. This company could be threatened an awful lot by some of the challenges that are on the horizon, but they need to unpick the opportunities, pick up the opportunities, mould them, refine them, develop them, and come up with an updated, shall we say, business plan to go forward. That's it.
Thank you, appreciate that. I didn't unmute myself there. Pradeep, what were your thoughts? What would be the natural next steps or the next things you do for these individuals?
There's a lot of people to handle here. It'd be nice to have so many clients, but I have a tight diary for once. But yes, I'd like to speak with Sam, Diane, Norm, and his friend Cliff. It's basically to sort of review where they are. And I think we discussed this as well, review where you are in life, what you've been able to achieve so far, pick up on things that have worked for you and things that haven't worked, more importantly as well. And based on that, that's like a solid foundation to move forward. It's very difficult to sort of plan ahead in certain respect, but I make it a journey of exploration, something, that's something to look forward to rather than cringe at thinking what's around the corner next. I know we're living in difficult times at the moment with COVID and a lot of things happening and not happening around us, but it's a sort of quiet conversation over a cup of coffee or something stronger and just explore. It's a voyage of exploration and it's just a conversation at this stage. And I think that can reveal a lot about the individuals, their deepest hidden desires, even things that frightens them and how to get over those, because where there is a fright and fear, there is something more powerful waiting at the other end. We tend to stop ourselves from going from fear. But yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with these guys. And, I think we can explore a lot of their options and just design something that could work for them and really working with them. Because in any business, you have to have a business plan. This is about a life plan. You do it something because you're so excited about having to achieve it, then it becomes second nature and you go ahead and achieve it. And then you go to the next stage and think, wow, that was fun. Let's do some more of it. That's where I come from.
Cool. Amazing, Pradeep. Thanks for that. Claudia, what do you think?
Well, I'm thinking that given the situation that Diane and Sam are in, their mind must be a little bit cluttered at the moment with everything going on, and they may be just reacting instead of stepping back and taking a look. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you have a colleague or someone in a similar business that it might be good to step across and see what's happening on their side of the pond and see how their manufacturing business is doing or the food business and see what is it that you're missing if you're missing something. I would recommend that they get a mentor, just somebody they can bounce idea off who is independent of themselves. So that person can see the bigger picture and maybe not answer their question, but at least streamline for them where they need to go and what they, how they need to prioritize what they need to do. So if they need to go get some help, if they need financial advice, if they need to talk to an accountant or whatever, they can think a little bit more clearly. So definitely on that front.
But it's interesting you raised that, because that third party perspective is so important, because
it can be very valuable.
Sometimes too close to our own stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, so you don't see it. And the person outside will be able to look and say, oh, and it might be something very, very easy. So the action that's needed. So that's definitely one thing. And with 100%. Diane, sit with her mother, have a conversation, and maybe be a bit more polite but direct. This conversation needs to be had, because sometimes, as Pradeep said, there's fear and people don't want to address things because they're afraid of what will happen. So somebody has to not skirt around and say, okay, but in a loving way, clearly, because it's her mom. And with regards to Norm, I would recommend that he sit down and have a conversation with Cliff. Where do I want to be? Where are you headed? How can do you want to be on the journey for where I'm going? And how can we work that out? Sometimes it's easier to have that conversation, and it would stop a whole lot of thought process and further actions that's needed. So
I think the interesting point there is Norm could be making plans reliant on Cliff. Cliff's plans might be completely different, mightn't they?
That's right. And it could be that they could complement each other still, even though they're different, because as they're getting older, different things are happening in their personal lives. Different things are taking priority. So it could be that it could work, but have the conversation. If it is not working, then you know where you stand and what to do. And with all this youthful energy around, some of them are going to want to be boss themselves. So you have to be practical. 20 years from now, very few would be staying back to work with you. But it would be good if you spew out leaders from where you utilize.
But interesting, I think that's where the popularity of that management buyout or employee ownership trust or arrangements like that potentially will increase in popularity, because people want to be the boss. But if they can do that without all the wrinkles it creates from building and growing and starting the business, then maybe they'll take that route instead.
Yes. And for everybody, I said I'm a lover of action plans. Spreadsheets, fantastic. Whether you put them on a hard copy or a soft copy, doesn't matter. It's good to see your actions. And everyone can have, all involved can have this plan and just go through it, because guess what? When you're going off the rail, you'll know when things need changing, it will be more visible. So those are my thought processes.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. Who should we go with next? Charlie, talk to me about what you'd... David, see you later, mate. Thank you. Appreciate that. Bye.
Bye, David.
Charlie, talk to me about what you'd potentially recommend as first next steps.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny actually. I actually discussed Sam and Diane yesterday as part of the financial coaching training I'm doing, and probably digging back into what a lot of other people have said. I think we don't necessarily know what the past relationship with these restaurants are. And what might be interesting is digging a bit more into that and the history of actually their ownership to find out whether there is a deep emotional attachment to these restaurants. Like, let's say it was their first business, and that's why perhaps they're a bit worried about letting it go. And again, a lot of what we do within that coaching is talking people through and hopefully getting them to a conclusion, of weighing up the positives and negatives of their emotional and rational responses. Because there is sometimes the value in an object is beyond monetary, beyond perhaps the spreadsheet will show us, or a plan.
Charlie, I'm losing you a little bit on the audio, mate. Have you got?
You hear me any better?
A little bit better now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there is a lot more I think to find out from these people, and I think all again with Norm and the well-being plans and things. I think the next step's always probably is get more information, because we're within a case study, I think to really do our jobs as consultants, as advisors, we really must dig as deep as we can go and really find out what the motivations are behind what people are doing, and that helps us really form where we can take them. And for a lot of people, actually, the answers are within themselves, but it's digging into that to get it. We're just facilitating, really bringing those answers out.
Coaching isn't it? It's just about helping people get to the answers that are right for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Laura, thoughts?
Hi. Yeah, I think I'd want to understand a bit more about their resilience, because I think this whole situation has just tested everyone, hasn't it? And you know, it's hard to make sort of 10-20 year plans, and you know, if they are kind of head in the sand type people and they've done that recently, then what does that mean for the future? And you know, is their heart really into the restaurant business? You know, because I think, as we said before, the kind of personal, emotional state of people will drive everything else, won't it? So it could be that you make all these financial plans and look in the future and tax planning, but if their hearts aren't in it, or they don't have those core grounding skills, then there's just no point. But
I think the interesting point there is, like, are we making plans? Like, are they climbing up this ladder to achieve a goal that they're going to get to the top of and go, I'm on the wrong building? Do you know what I mean? I'm in completely the wrong place. And what we've found with a lot of our clients is lockdown's given them the opportunity to think about what their goals actually are. And maybe for Sam and Diane, part of the thought process is, do I want to go through this stress over the next 10 years of maintaining this business? Don't know.
yeah, exactly.
Good stuff.
Stephen's got his hand up.
Oh, Steve, go on, Steve.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what everyone else has said. And I go to visit Sam and Diane to try and resuscitate this business, or am I going there to be a funeral director and just bury the business? As I've told you on many occasions, I enjoy burying companies, and it's a very easy way of dealing with it. But you know, you need to speak to the clients and know whether they are emotionally attached to the business, that they've literally just had enough and they want to walk away from the restaurant business and concentrate on the other two businesses. You've got to go through the repercussions of winding up the business, the repercussions of continuing the business. Yeah. You know, there are serious considerations. I'm not sure from what you've said whether, assuming they're directors, but if they are directors as well as shareholders, then they've got legal responsibilities and obligations. And if they continue trading and continue losing money and continue not paying the PAYE and everything else and VAT or whatever, then obviously I've got to explain to them, you know, there are serious repercussions. You know, so you've got to give them the various options available to them, you know, and start from there. And that's what I do when I go into a business. I want to know from the directors and from the shareholders, ideally, what you want to do in the future. Do you want to try and keep this business alive, or do you want to walk away from it? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, mate. Nigel, thoughts? What would be the first actions you might take when these clients are looking to engage?
Yeah, I mean, the businesses, I'd get Sam and Diana to go to a bank, get the support from the bank for the restaurant business, then concentrate on the other businesses. Yeah. If the business goes down, it goes bust, and it hasn't affected the other businesses, and they can concentrate on those. Yeah. As far as Diana's mother's concerned, at the moment, she's in good health and she can understand what's going on. So I would probably advise that if she feels able to, she should pass the property on to her daughter. And then when something happens, it's in her daughter's name. So anything needs to be done in future, like rent the property out.
It can be managed, yeah.
Managed easier. What you don't want is for mother to become suddenly ill, and then you have to start trying to do things with an asset which isn't in your name, which can be an absolute nightmare. Yeah, if it's all transferred to the daughter, they can, if it need a care home in a few years' time, they can discuss it, they can decide where to go, and if any financial decisions have to be made, they can be easily done.
I suppose the other, going back to Sam, Diane and the business, it's whether a bank would be prepared to loan the money without a form of personal guarantee, isn't it?
Probably get the guarantee from the other businesses.
Yeah, maybe or maybe personally, yeah. So it's with that conversation be interesting. Janet, thoughts? I know we've gone sort of round, and there might be a couple of bits. You normally come up with a few amazing gems. Don't want to put you on the spot.
There's some really good points that have come out of this about, you know, I think particularly like the financing externally. And I would maybe go down the bounce back loans and see whether or not that was an option for them. I mean, certainly. You know, I think the other good point that came out was looking at why they've only got the sort of 2 main customers and how vulnerable that would leave them.
100%.
I think, you know, again, that was a really good point. But, you know, I think that from what I see, you know, there is often a lot of emotional attachment to people's companies, particularly when they've built them up from nothing. You know, they don't see them as particularly as a sellable asset. They see it as, you know, as their babies. And so convincing someone to get rid of it almost can be quite a difficult challenge. So I think if they have got that emotional attachment and they want to keep the 3 companies, it would be finding the best way to manage and structure them and finance them. So I think that, you know, there are real good points there. I think the other thing that just really sort of come out to me was the 3rd company with Norms. I'd be looking at maybe some sort of sales analysis on that about sort of products to see where his sort of profitability lies. I mean, he says he's got a profitable company, but it may be in certain aspects of it, and there could actually be some aspects which are not so profitable. Maybe needs to refocus.
That's a fair comment. Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, so where's the money being made and where isn't it?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, they were my sort of main points. I mean, obviously the inheritance tax and that there's not enough information to sort of discuss on that. But
you know, I like to keep it a little bit vague, just to keep it open to interpretation a bit. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to go down a slightly different route. I mean,
go on, I'm excited now. Go on, what's this different route?
It's not that different. But I mean, the first thing I'd say to Sam and Diane is just get yourself some bloody good advisors, because you obviously haven't had any to date. And I know a whole group of people I could recommend you to do all the financial type stuff. No, I would be saying, don't forget that your business is only as good as the employees that you have in there. And amongst all of this and everything that's been going on, do not forget them. You know, a little bit of investment in your people in terms of time and education. You know, let them know what your strategy is. Don't keep them in the dark. You know, if it is a bit of education around where the business is at the moment, around how to help them personally if they've been on furlough, you know, what can you do? Because these people are going to be out there in the market. You know, if you're about to make them redundant, make sure you make that process as easy as you can for them and help them through that, because they're going to be talking to other people. So if you're going to have 2 businesses left and get rid of one, make sure those 2 businesses can succeed and be as great as you can, those people.
Yeah.
Same goes for Norm. Sorry.
I mean, I think the point is just communicate well and early, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Support your employees. Don't forget about them when you're going through all of this other stuff that you're having to with your advisors, because if they all start to become demotivated,
fair comment. That's really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I'm glad you took us in that particular direction. It was really good. Mike, thoughts?
See if my microphone's on. All the best ideas have been nicked already. Claudia nicked my idea, which was a mentor. Although actually, I would suggest a mentor for Norm. I think Norm's doing everything pretty much right so far. You know, we haven't spoken to him. We're making up a lot and we're making lots of assumptions. But somebody to bounce things off would be quite useful, and therefore a mentor who would not necessarily be as hands-on as a coach or an accountant, who perhaps really needs to get a bit more hands-on with Sam and Diane, because I think there's a lot more questions that arose from their case study. The 2 large customers, I took on a business that had 3 large customers. It was an engineering company in Bedford, and they persuaded me that, or they had persuaded themselves, they didn't entirely persuade me. The 3 customers were all in different sectors. And so they'd been going 30 years, they'd had 3 customers for 30 years. And in that 30 years, whenever one had had a bad year, the other two always made up for it, sometimes more than made up for it. So actually the figures were great. The 30 years they'd had, I think, one loss-making year and 29 profit-making years. And so we were trying to sell it and having a bit of success. And then suddenly they stopped answering the telephone, completely stopped. And I spoke to their accountant and he said, yeah, all 3 customers suddenly went in 1 year, and they just dried up overnight.
Yeah, I think particularly if you've got it's slightly different when you've got small businesses, but we've had large corporate clients where they've got rid of their FD, and our relationship was with the FD.
Yep.
And that actually is sometimes a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and retail. If you're selling into retail, I think I did mention retail, or yes, 2 large UK retailers. Retailers have got these things called buyers that you have the relationship with.
Yeah, and they change.
And if a buyer changes, it can go overnight.
Yeah, fair, 100% fair points. Diversification, I think, is key. So that's all good. Anybody? Oh, Sarah, tell me.
I need to go. Sorry. Just say thank you for having me. Loved it. Catch up soon.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, hopefully that was for our newbies, Sarah being one and Nigel and Laura, I think, being the others. You enjoyed your first inner circle. Hopefully you'll be able to come to another one. We're going to be running these once a month, and hopefully we might be able to do a hybrid face-to-face / online one coming up soon, because it'd be good. Some of you I've never met, so it'd be good if we could do that moving forward. I'll get the dates for next month's one. We've got that on Eventbrite already. I think the date for that one is, if you're available for it, is, let me just check, is on the 21st of October, starting at 1. So hopefully you're around for that. Similar sort of format. It's on Eventbrite. I'll put a link on there. I'll email a link out actually a little bit later today. Hopefully I'll catch up with some of you soon. Have a really, really lovely remainder of the afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.